All right, so my favorite article of the week comes to us from, and let me go ahead and switch back here for you. Comes to us from episode 252 of the Prepper Website podcast. And on that episode, I talked about the realities of long-term blackouts and apartment prepping. So that was a great episode. So I'm going to I want to bounce off of this article from askaprepper.com. And so I have all of these articles on the, on the description. And so you can go check those out there. And askaprepper.com, and the title is 7 Terrifying Realities of Long-Term Blackouts That You've Probably Never Considered. And so, like I said, I'm going to bounce off of this article here and just talk a little bit. When you're looking at this article is based on a blackout and realities of a blackout and what they would do. And we're not talking about a blackout that's going to last a couple of days or a blackout that's going to last even a week. We're talking about, because we've experienced that, especially here in Houston when we've had hurricanes. I mean, there was people that were without power for a week. I mean, that's no big deal. That's easily weathered. But when you go longer than that, when you go, a month, when you go, longer than that, with no idea or no news that you're going to have it up and running anytime soon. So when I think it was Hurricane Ike. When Hurricane Ike hit last time, we had members of the church that had power, so we were able to go stay with them. So I mean there's some relief there. There's people all over our part of town of Houston that could go live with other families or go stay with other families, and they were okay, right? But when you have, let's say, a whole region where the power has completely gone off and you're in this real SHTF situation, and so that affects so many things that a lot of the times people who aren't thinking about those realities, you don't realize how they're going to affect you, how not having power, because you've never been in a situation like that before. The government has always been able to come in and help, or you've been able to travel somewhere else. But when you're talking about a wide range blackout that has covered a whole big area, and there's no hope for the lights coming back on anytime soon, then things start devolving into chaos very, very quickly. And so I don't want to focus on the blackout aspect of that. I rather really, and the reason I'm saying that is because I titled this SHTF Realities, right? So big SHTF realities, because it's not just a blackout. It could be when we hit, if we ever get into a situation where we are in that big SHTF situation, then we are going to experience these things. So whether it's a blackout or whether it's anything that shuts us down, we're going to experience these. And so I wanted to kind of talk a little bit, because a lot of people they just don't think about these things. And so let's go ahead. I'm going to go over to the article, and here's the article here. The first thing that he talks about is water, right? And he says, what are you going to do when the water treatment plants officially go offline? How will that correlate with water taps no longer running? With local news, how do you know when to stop trusting the water that's coming out of the tap? Okay, a lot of things there to consider. So, what do you do? We're so used to being able to go to our tap. In fact, we're so spoiled that we don't even drink the water out of the tap, right? We buy bottles of water, and we drink bottles of water, and that's what if we don't have bottles of water, oh my gosh, the world's going to end. And so, we have water filters and all those kinds of things, and you should. Sometimes the water that's coming out of the tap isn't the greatest, but let's just say, if we were to go to our water tap and were to turn it on and the water doesn't come out, wow, what are we going to do there? Because think about all those things that it affects, right? It affects you to be able to drink your water, because if you don't drink water, your body starts to shut down very, very quickly. And especially if you, in Houston, if it is, the summer months, man, you would die very, very quickly, right? We had people that died when they were evacuating from Hurricane Ike because there was so much traffic going out of the city, and they pulled over to the side, they ran out of gas, and people that were medically fragile died in cars. So sad, but so stupid, and that happened. And so think about if this was really widespread, and there was no water coming on. So there's no water to drink, there's no water to cook. There's no water for hygiene, brushing your teeth, washing up. There's no water to wash your clothes. There's no water to flush your toilets. What are you going to do there, right? There's so many aspects that handle that. And so if the poop was to hit the fan, and you're living in a city where there is no water around, what are you going to do? How are you going to, if you don't have any water storage, and even if you do have some water storage, how long is that going to last you? Then you need to replenish it. If you were in a real, blackout situation, how long would your water really realistically last you? And so that's one of the things to consider. Here in my house, we have a pool. And so if I needed to flush toilets, I could go use water from the pool, and that way it wouldn't take water from us drinking and cooking and hygiene and those kinds of things. But eventually that's going to wear down. That's going to wear out. What are we going to do at that point? And so, it's a lot of things to be thinking about. So people who are living in the city, people who don't have a well that they're able to draw from, and even people who do have wells but don't have ways to get it out of the well, are going to be hurting big time. That's going to be a very, very, very big situation there, and I don't think a lot of people are really prepared for that. So moving on with that, when you continue going on this article, one of the next things is trash, right? And I want to make sure that I don't just stay on these topics a long, long time, but there are things that I have thought about. Trash. What are you going to do with trash? I have a family, and we put trash out there, and man, God forbid that we miss trash day because it starts to pile up on us and it's nasty. It smells nasty. It's not something that we want to keep around. But think about if you were in a real situation where the poop has hit the fan and there's not trash pickup, what's going to happen? Where is that trash going to go? The trash is going to start piling up. And you think about it when you go Google or go search for places where, trash, the trash pickup has gone on strike, and how that has just piled up on streets, and how nasty that gets. Think again. Remember, we've been in situations before, like again, hurricanes and stuff like that. When we're told by through news and things like that, is stack up your limbs and stack up your things on the side or on the edge of the street, and then the county is going to come and pick those up, and they have these big trucks that come and pick up all that stuff. But what's going to happen when that does not come, when there's not that available? And think about what you're going to do with all that trash. So for instance, I have a fire pit, right? In the back of my mind, I'm going to start burning things right away. But the thing is, after you start burning things, what are you going to do with it? So you can start combining things that are plastic or things that are containers. You probably wouldn't want to burn, but container stuff, anything that can hold like soil, you might want to use that for plants and things like that. So, there's some things that you can do there, but eventually you're going to have so much trash that it's going to pile up no matter what you do. And here's the thing. On all of these things that I'm going to be talking about, you might be prepared. You might be better off than some of your neighbors, but your neighbors are going to cause problems for you. And that's not only the fact that, hey, they're going to see you and they're going to want to know what you're doing. Just their problems, because they're not thinking about preparedness. They're going to exasperate the problems, because they're going to put things out there, and they're not going to be burning them and things like that. So their trash eventually is going to come rolling into your yard and your side of the house and all that kind of stuff. So, terrible things to really think about. But, if things were to go down, like sometimes we think, it would be bad. Sometimes I think preppers think it's like, if the poop hits the fan, it's going to be like a camping vacation, right? It's going to be like an extended camping trip. No. It is going to be bad. It's going to be it's going to be real bad. So you got to think about trash. What are you going to do with the trash? So you have trash out there, and you're putting it out there, and it's piling up. So what's going to come with that? You're going to have rats coming out. You're going to have animals coming out and going through it and spreading all those things out, and you're going to have a big mess on your hands. So how long before it really starts stinking to high heaven, and how long before it starts causing other problems? So let's continue to move on. Sewage. One of the things people don't realize is the backup of sewage. When you have you go to the restroom, and you always hear that term, if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down, right? So you remember that, but eventually you've got to flush the toilet. So where is that going to go? Now, if you are lucky enough to live in an area where it's gravity fed, and so everything goes downhill, right, then you're going to be better off than some people. Like, I've talked to people in our area, and we are on a gravity system, but we get to a point where there's pumps, and the pumps pump it over, and then it goes down another grade, and then it gets to a point where it stops and gets to pumps, and then it continues to flow down that way. But if the pumps have 3 days worth of fuel, right? And the idea is that it's getting it to the waste treatment plant, and the waste treatment plant is taking care of it. So after those 3 days, it runs out, the fuel runs out, and then we start having backups. Even those of you that are on a gravity-fed system, that it goes the gravity-fed all the way to the waste treatment plants. If the waste treatment plants don't have electricity, or the waste treatment plants aren't being managed, at some point, they're not going to be taking in waste anymore. And so it will back up as well. And so everybody is going to have this backup situation, unless you are on a system where you have septic tanks, right? And even with septic tanks, eventually they have to be cleaned out, but you'll have it a lot better than people that are living in neighborhoods where they don't have them. And so eventually the sewage is going to back up, and you're going to have a bad problem. You know what? We had a friend during Hurricane Harvey. One of the ladies that comes to our church, they were told in their neighborhood not to use the water because the water treatment plant wasn't at capacity, and so it didn't want to get overwhelmed, and they didn't want to have backups and stuff like that. And so, they were calling the neighbors, and they were going into the civic center, and they were talking to them about what to do. And she, I was telling her what to do, and so those kinds of things. Luckily, it didn't get that bad. They were able to fix it very quickly. But man, that wasn't even a poop hit the fan situation. That was just a water treatment plant was having some issues after Hurricane Harvey coming back online, and they didn't want to be able, or they couldn't manage everybody washing clothes and things like that. So what's going to happen if that happens? So you have eventually people are not, again, you remember I told you that your neighbors aren't going to, you might be doing the right thing, but your neighbors might not be doing the right thing. And so they're going to the restroom, and eventually all the lines go to the same sewage, and eventually starts backing up. So you might not be using the restroom, but your neighbors are using the restroom, and then their sewage is coming and backing up into your home. And the minute that happens, that's disease, that's nasty. You can't live in your home anymore. You don't want to live around that. What are you going to do? Now, one of the things that I have always thought about and talked about is, I have a big clean out valve. When we moved into our home, maybe about a year or two after that, I had to, send a Roto-Rooter down, went to Home Depot, and, rented one of those and sent it down. And so I know where mine is at and all those kinds of things. I was able to look down it, and it's probably like a 3 or 4 inch PVC pipe that goes down there. So I see where it goes, and I see where it goes out to the sewer and where it goes into my house. One of the things that I've always thought about is putting some kind of a pig, an inflatable pig, where you're able to set it down there. And of course, you'd have to rig up some kind of way to blow it up, but you get it down there and you blow it up, and it expands, and it would just make that area or make it to where nothing could pass. So you couldn't send anything through yourself from your side, but nothing could come back up. And so that way your house would be safe, and you wouldn't have anything like that. But again, that doesn't mean that sewage wouldn't be coming up your neighbor's house, and then they're tracking disease all over the place and things like that. So you see how bad it can get so easily because people aren't thinking about these things, and then they're not prepared. And so you can be prepared, you can be doing all the right things, but people around you might not be doing those things. So let's continue on. Talked about a little bit about disease, and so again with the trash not being picked up, and rats and dogs and cats and squirrels and raccoons getting into your trash and spreading all that kind of stuff around, right? So you have that with the sewage not being taken care of. You have this thing where disease is going to be just running rampant. And these are things, again, these are things that people aren't thinking about, man, because it's so easy for us to just like, we're running a fever or someone's running a fever. We go to the emergency clinic, right? And they're able to give us some antibiotics or whatever. And that's the way most people think. They're not thinking about that. Hey, maybe the lights aren't coming back on, or hey, maybe, society's not going to be getting back into the groove of things like normal. This isn't hurricane. This isn't, the government's not coming to save you, next Tuesday. This is like the big time, right? And it's one of those things that we don't always think about. One of the other things that he said is bills. So what would happen if this was a situation where this was a regional issue? So let's say, so in the United States, you have the Eastern power grid, you have the Western power grid, and then Texas has its own power grid, right? And so, a lot of people don't understand that. So let's just say the Texas power grid went down. What would that do to Texas, and how would that devastate that? And so, what if that happened, but let's just say the rest of the country was still good and active, and you had your mortgage was being paid to a bank that was somewhere else and not necessarily in Texas, and they were saying, okay, hey, we want to get paid. What are you doing, right? And so you have that aspect of it. I don't think that would be that big of a deal there, but you have that. One of the things he talked about is the speed of decline. I don't know if you ever got to see American Blackout, and it was a movie on National Geographic, I guess. And so it was around the time Doomsday Preppers or whatever. And so I was lucky enough, they sent me a preview copy of it, and I did a little review. I thought it was great. There is also a version, there is an English version of that, like a British version of that. And it's on YouTube. I actually linked to it on my website, Ed That Matters. But, in that documentary, that docudrama, I thought it was so good. I had my kids sit down and watch it with me, and they thought it was like, okay, what is Dad doing? But it was interesting. It was something that people were very, very interested in, or they were interested in, and it wasn't one of those things that bored them to death, because it was this docudrama of what was going on. And in that docudrama, things devolve very quickly, like 10 days, and things people are going nuts after 10 days and making bad decisions and doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and so things can spiral out of control very, very quickly. We are just lucky that we've never had a situation where we've experienced that. Now, when you look at history and you look at things that happen in Europe, there's always revolutions, and there's always things that happen that spiral out of control. Governments, monarchies get taken out, and all those kinds of things. But there's this big spin up, and eventually it does settle down. The issue is that it spins up very quickly. It can spin up very quickly, and then it can, it has these complex problems of getting everything fixed. When things have spun up before in the past, people still had some very basic common sense skills and things. We weren't living in this high-tech world. And so it's very scary to think about the complexities of recovery. And that's one of the other things that he says here, is the complexity of recovery for those of us, that we are so used to this modern day life, this modern day that we're living this world. And the government, even if the government was still intact and they were still able to help out, what would how long would it take, and how far would society go downhill before they were actually get things back up. Remember what happened in Katrina in New Orleans, and that wasn't even. I mean, they knew that the government was coming. Now, it didn't come as fast as it should have, and we can talk about all those kinds of things. But we still had, the whole state of Louisiana was pretty much still in decent shape, and there was help coming. But even at that, things got really, really crazy. And so you have an idea of how quickly things could devolve into chaos if there was some widespread situation, right? The blackout, a pandemic, whatever that happens that winds up shutting down, society. So let's go here. One of the last things he starts talking about here is just preparing for those realities. What is your preparedness plan? How are you going to approach it? One of the things that I did. Let me get here to the point where let me just kind of wrap this up and close this out. One of the things the way that I think, I guess, is I try to think long term. I know when we're talking about when someone's new into preparedness, and you might be new and you might be coming here because of the podcast, or you just someone has shared this out with you and you're here. And so when we talk about preparedness, having a plan, we definitely need to start with a plan. And you might start out with a 2 week. Okay, hey, if I needed to be prepared for 2 weeks, what do I need to do? If I need to be prepared for a month, what do I need to do? If I need to be prepared for 2 months, what do I need to do? What does my preparedness plan look like? But one of the things that I try to do is like, how can whatever I'm preparing for, how can I make it to where I can, where it can continue to take me, through to the future. And whether that is, gardening, whether that is some kind of livestock and animals thinking, if that is, having some kind of solar panels, having, candles, having a way to, to have water other than what you have in your house, being able to pump it out of a well, those types of things. I try to think long term in those cases, and not necessarily because I'm looking for the poop to hit the fan. Believe me, even talking about these realities, you do not ever want that. There's some people out there that I think when I read articles, or where I see comments on Facebook or on websites and forums and different things, it's kind of like it's a romantic idea. Again, I said it before, is like, hey, this will be like a long-term camping trip. No, it will not be that. It will be bad. And so you don't want that. But we know how fragile society is. We know how fragile our systems are. And we depend on these things. And it's scary when you think about, how one thing can break, and that can cause so many other problems for us, in our society. And so that's one reason why I try to think long term. Have a plan. Plan out, be very smart about your plan, be very methodical, do that before you start freaking out and going crazy and buying all kinds of stuff. That's not the purpose of that. But also you get to a place where you start thinking really long term, and like, if this was to go really long, what do I need to have in place, right? And those are some questions to possibly ask yourself. So guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me on the favorite article of the week.